This is Earth Radio. And now here's human music.
What's up, Speedy's Garage gang? Welcome back to Speedy's Garage. This week, we're gonna get back on that shop build series. Those of you that tuned in last week saw that we picked up a new workbench and OCD's kicking in. You can see I've got quite a bit of stuff laid out here that I gotta put away. I have gotten a start though, all nice and organized like I like it. But this week we're back on the shop build, so let's go check out the questions you had from the last video. My buddy Eric from True Shine left me a message. He says, one of my favorite garages I've worked in. Thanks, Eric. I'm glad you're still following along. If you remember, Eric was the guy that came by. He works for True Shine, like I said, and he did the ceramic coating and the clear protective film on Go Man Go there. And Eric, it's holding up awesome. One of the best investments I've made on the car. Guys, if you're in Middle Tennessee, definitely check out True Shine. Eric's super professional with that stuff. Chris Robbins asks, hey Speedy, what was the purpose of the CMU block wall? Was that something that was required by code, or was it for structural purpose to reduce the length of the wall studs? Well, actually, the reason they did that, I'm kind of glad they did. Number one, I like kind of having that Bricko block layer. If I'm pressure washing here or something, it just sprays on the Bricko block and not a big deal, won't hurt the drywall. But the real reason they did it was because we used 2x6s for the wall studs, and that was due to the ceiling height being about 12 feet. Due to that extra, distance and sheetrock and everything, the builder wanted to use the upgraded 2x6s for the studs, and it allowed a thicker R rating on the insulation. So that was the two reasons, but the big reason for the Bricko block being the height that it is was so they didn't have to cut a bunch of 2x6s. They ended up being exactly 10 feet tall, and I'll show you that. I've got my handy dandy laser measure deal here, and I'm gonna set it on the top of the stud that's on top of the brick, and it shoots a laser. Hopefully you can see that up there. And then I'll take a measurement. So now, you can see it's almost exactly 10 feet. So that's the reason that they did the 3 layers of Bricko block there. Okay, DL Hellcat says, you got an awesome shop. Did you put fiber or rebar in the concrete floor? Curious how the floor is holding up with cracks. Enjoy your videos, hope you keep making them. I asked about that, and I think there might have been some fiber mixed in with the concrete when we upgraded to the 4,000 PSI. They might have done that with the 3,002, I'm not 100% sure. I did ask them about putting rebar in the concrete, and they told me they weren't going to do that, and so there is no rebar, but it is 4,000 PSI concrete. I haven't noticed any cracks or anything in the concrete floor to speak of, and it's been about 3 years. However, the concrete guy did tell me there's 2 types of concrete. Concrete that's cracked and concrete that hasn't cracked yet. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we develop a crack over time. If someone's a concrete expert, leave some comments and educate us and let us know how that really goes. The attached garage that's attached to the house, it does have a few cracks in the concrete. I'm thinking maybe the epoxy that we put on top for the floor coating, and I'll talk about that more in the future, may help with some of that. They did come in and diamond grind it and put some special sealers and stuff on there, kind of a primer, and it sealed it all up, so that may help with some of the cracking. I don't know for sure, but no, I don't have any cracking. It's been about 3 years. Frank Lyle says, cool time lapse, fun to watch a project come together. Hope that you can do that when he starts the mountain build of his shop. And he says, the term I was looking for in the previous video where we talked about the delays was punitive damages. And he says, in commercial construction, they are very real. It's usually a dollar figure per day, and there's always some negotiations for weather, unforeseen conditions, etc. He says he's worked on a project where the damages were $5,000 a day past the completion date set a year or more in advance. With the cost of some of these multi-million-dollar projects, the intent on the construction loan, or the interest on the construction loan starts to really add up at the end of a job, and the owners are not really interested in eating that interest past an agreed date. They want to be in the building generating revenue, or in your case, want to be tinkering on the cat. Great series, look forward to the next installment. Definitely would like to know what finish was installed on the slab. Looks great and looks like it's holding up well. And he says not all products do. I will get to that. So when we get to the concrete floor, I'm gonna do a whole video just on that, because there was quite a bit of decision making that came into that and the product that I used. So we'll get to that for sure. Repeat Briggs says, thank you for the inspiration and ideas from your shop build series. These will be very helpful when I build my shop in the year or two. I'm planning on a 2-story 30 by 40 detached shop built in the side of a hill. That'll be actually very nice. So the second story will walk into our backyard. The second floor will house game room, bathroom, and small kitchenette. Look forward to the upcoming episodes. Stay tuned. We're gonna have a bunch of these actually because there's quite a bit that goes into building one of these deals. Let's see, Stinger Vet says, what do you do for sound in the garage? I like to work with the radio going. I was thinking about putting plugs in the upper corners of the shop so I can run surround sound, being most run on Bluetooth connection now. Cool Garage and channel been following for a while now. Orange Crush vids have been helpful with my twin turbo Challenger. Tell me more about that twin turbo Challenger, even if you just email me. I would love to know how you got going with that twin turbo Challenger, and I'll show you. I'm gonna do a little bit more on this later, but I will show you. There's what I did for sound and entertainment. It's a, I think that's maybe a 32, 40 inch. I can't remember the size of the TV, 42 inch. Let's say it's a 42 inch for now till I find out different. And a sound bar. And believe it or not, it does really, really well. The sound bar is Bluetooth. And so it allows me to connect up a laptop or my phone with Spotify or whatever else. And of course we got our internet Wi-Fi over there to extend the internet over to the shop. And I did put plugs. You can see one up there in the ceiling. I've got one over here above the sink. I put plugs in strategic locations, and we'll talk more about those when it comes time to discuss electrical, which is coming up pretty quickly. So with the questions answered, now we're going to start talking about the framing. That's what's next in the shop build. So the concrete was finished up as you saw last time. If you're not caught up on the video series, I'll be sure to link to them at the top so you can go back. I think we're the third or fourth one now, and so you can go back and check those out and get brought up to speed. On this one, we're going to be talking about framing. And so timeline wise, we're probably 2 months in. Remember, we had a delay because of the city ordinance. I had to go down and do a variance for that. We had some equipment issues. The builder's backhoe and the one with the rubber treads that wouldn't tear up the driveway had a mechanical failure. They had to order a part. That caused the delay. And so we're now about 2 months in. Once we got to the framing, that went very fast. They actually completed the frame in 4 days, which I was shocked. Every day I'd come home from work, it was massive amounts of work had taken place while I was at work each day. And so you'll see here, the frame package had been delivered. They stored it all on the side of the driveway and made sure we could still get in and out of our garage. But they did have to deliver quite a bit of material there with plywood and the studs and all of that good stuff. And so that was to start the frame off. And then they had to make trusses, and those were for the roof and the roof pitch. And I had to be very careful there because I wanted to make sure that the eave of the shop lined up pretty close with the eave of the house. And since the house has 8-foot ceilings on each floor and the shop was going to be 12 foot, we had to do some adjusting there with the angle of the pitch of the roof. And then because of the recess for the lift posts, the trusses actually had to be custom made. They had to have an engineer come in and do some work, I guess in CAD or something, to figure out how the trusses were going to be constructed. And those were delivered a couple of days later. All in all, like I said, 4 days to get the framing done. Now, when I designed the shop, I designed it so that in the summertime or when it was nice out in the spring or in the fall, I could raise the garage door on the front, and I had a great big double window in the back, and I would get a nice cross breeze. The way the home is laid out on the property, I'm at the top of a hill, and so I get a nice cool breeze that blows up kind of like through a valley and comes up the street and blows right in the front of my house actually. And when there's bad weather, it's quite strong wind, but when it's nice out, you get a nice cool breeze on the property. And so I thought I could have it where I could raise the garage door and the breeze would blow through, but honestly, because of the humidity here, we're in Middle Tennessee, and in the summer it's very humid. Even with the breeze, I was sweating half to death, so I honestly haven't used the window hardly at all. I would still put it in regardless because of the light. I like having the daylight come in and I can kind of look out when I'm working on my workbench and stuff and look outside. But I've been using the mini split to keep the shop at a comfortable temperature and humidity. And honestly, I haven't used the window. I don't think I may have opened it once or twice in the 3 or 4 years we've had the shop, but haven't been using it like I thought I would. So that's something to consider if you're looking at putting windows in. And also think about dirt and debris that might blow in the shop. You guys know I'm a little bit OCD about stuff. I don't want the shop being full of dust and dirt all the time. And a couple of times I opened it, it seemed like those little propeller tree little things and leaves and stuff would want to blow in, or grass clippings and things of that nature. So I haven't been using the window as much as I thought I would. Now here you can see where the man door is going to be located, and I wanted it close enough to the front of the shop that I wouldn't be wasting any valuable wall space for cabinets or shelves or whatever else. So I put it as close to the front of the shop as I could on the left-hand side, and then enough room for, you know, the Brico block to be the right length and all of that good stuff. So there's the framing for the man door. You already saw the window, and now we've got the trusses in place. You can see those there, and they use that kind of reverse insulation on those on the top of the plywood on top of the trusses to help with some of the heat and cooling. Now I made the bathroom and the air compressor closet the same size. They were 3 feet by 4 feet, and I wanted that to be an internal measurement. And so now's the time you need to be sure about that kind of stuff when the frame goes up, and once they start, especially once they start putting electrical and sheetrock in, you can't really make any changes. So if you're going to do anything, make sure you really look over how the framing is laid out, because they can make small adjustments pretty easily at that point. Once you get past here, you're stuck. So make sure it's exactly like you wanted. I actually kind of walked into each of the bathroom and the compressor closet. I took very detailed measurements, especially for the compressor closet, and I knew what kind of compressor I was going to use. I was planning to use that Quincy QT-54, and if you haven't seen that video, I'll link to that to the top as well. And that's the compressor I had chosen, so I went and actually went to a local store that had one in stock and took measurements myself. I looked online to see what they were, and then measured it myself and took detailed notes, and then came home and confirmed that that compressor would fit in that closet without any issues, would fit through the doorway especially, and not have any problems, and have plenty of air around it. You know, when an air compressor runs, it needs air around it to keep it cool and things of that nature, and so I made sure all that would work out fine. And this is also when you need to be thinking about where your plugs and your switches, and if you're gonna have internet service or something of that nature in your shop, you need to start thinking about where those connections are going to be located, because they're gonna have to be, the boxes for the most part are gonna have to be attached to a stud, and it's easy to do this now. So I went around with a black Sharpie and started kind of laying out where I thought the plugs and switches would be best located. I did put some in the ceiling, as I mentioned earlier, so think about that too. I want to have some, what do they call it, specific lighting, where they're, you know, the light's right above where I'm working. So I've got the option to hang some lights if I wanted to on the ceiling and have them plugged directly into the ceiling, and then they would have a chain that would hang down, obviously, to turn them on and off. And so think about that kind of stuff. Think about your exterior lighting as well. I wanted the shop to look as nice as the house, and so we put some can lights in. Think about any floodlights for, you know, at night if you have a dog or something, you let them out. You want to be able to have some floodlights, maybe motion activated or things of that nature, and maybe even cameras now. I mean, that's gotten to be pretty popular, and something that I'm looking at upgrading to is having some cameras put in place around the property so that we can kind of monitor what's going on. So those are some other things you want to think about. Once the locations are determined and they start putting the sheetrock in and running the wiring and all that, it gets very difficult to make changes. So really take time and think about it. I used to sit out in the shop and just kind of look around and think, okay, I would envision myself doing work. Where would I need a plug? I would think where my workbenches were going to be. And I went back and remember, we got the plan, you know, we did the drawing, and I was very, very detailed in where I thought workbenches were going to be located and cabinets and all of that, the workbench that goes back by the window. And so I put double plugs, and we'll get into electrical here pretty quickly, probably next week. And I'll start talking about the electrical layout and how I made those decisions with the switches, upgrading the 20 amp service instead of the standard 15, things like that. And so think about where your electrical connections are going to be. How high off the floor do you want them to be? That's another important thing. This is custom. You can do it however you want it to be. Are you going to have anything big like a welder? I have a 50 amp, a couple of 50 amp plugs in the shop. I had a 30 amp for the air compressor. We'll get into more of that later. A lot of people that seem to be electrical experts or shop experts have kind of given me a hard time about having that big plug going over to the wall where the air compressor is plugged in. They think it needs to be hardwired, and I guess maybe for a safety reason you could hardwire it, and I think the big reason is so that you don't unplug it while it's running. Duh, don't unplug an air compressor while it's running. I haven't had any issues with mine after 3 or 4 years, and so I'm going to leave it like it is. And then I did a plug for the lift as well up on the ceiling close to the top so that the cables wouldn't be running down the wall. So think about all of that stuff as your framing is going up, because now's when you can make changes. After this point, it's stuck. And another thing I highly recommend you do, take a ton of pictures. I found the pictures that I took, and I took them of every wall, especially the closet spaces where the compressor and the bathroom were going to be, because at some point I knew I was going to be putting pipes through the wall perhaps, or maybe hanging something on the wall, and you want to know exactly where your studs were, and it's nice to have a picture of them before the sheetrock goes up and hides them, and you know exactly where they're at. So when I came in to put the air compressor in, I was running the pipe through to put the regulator on the outside of the closet. I knew exactly where the studs were because I had pictures from where they had put the framing in. And so take a ton of pictures of all of that stuff and do it again after they run your electrical wiring. So then you know where the wires are located as well. You can go back and like, man, was there something here? I shouldn't drill into the wall right here. I shouldn't cut this spot out. I need to move it somewhere else. You can go back and reference your pictures to find out where all your wires are run. And like I said, all of this happened really quickly. The framing was done in 4 days from the day the product was delivered until it was completely finished. And then right behind the framer, the roofer came in and knocked the roof out. They used architectural, I think is what they're called, shingles, which matched the house. They put the roof vents in, you can see that there. And so that was all done to protect the wood so that it didn't rot or you know, because of all the rain and whatnot, had any water issues with it. So they came in and finished the roof right behind the framing, like the next day. And the roof only took about a day to complete. And there's where we ended up. So that's a good stopping point for today. I think next week we're going to get into electrical, so be sure to tune in for that. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Don't forget to leave me questions below in the comments. Like all of these, I will go back and answer those and read those comments on the next installment of this shop build series. Be sure to check us out on Instagram. It's at Speedy's_garage, as well as our website, www.speedysgarage.net. Appreciate you guys. Hope to see you out there. Nope, that's aimed the wrong way. Let's flip that guy around. Perfect, perfect. About the same distance apart. Oops.